Okay, welcome everybody to a slightly different video this week. Thought I'd do a bit of a tournament report from a tournament I had in paper over the last weekend. This was I think people in the States and elsewhere would call it probably like a 3K, 4K. There were very good prizes for the top 8 and also winning record, with the winner getting a revised Underground Sea. So yeah, decent prizes. Was at Axia now in the UK. This was my deck of choice and managed to end up splitting the finals and taking home some good prizes. Really impressed with how the deck performed. Felt really strong on the day. So thought I'd just do a bit of a video about that. Don't know if don't know if anyone would be interested in that, but a few people have reached out to me to say, right, they like the Rhinos content. So yeah, and obviously always happy to talk about a tournament that went well. So yeah, just I guess a little bit about the deck. Went with this list, which is they're pretty stock these days. I've gone for 24 lands. I've seen people playing between 22 and 25. You really need to hit your third land drop on turn 3. When when all of your spells cost 3 and 4 mana. So went with 24. Standard number of basics. Couple of Gemstone Caverns, which didn't actually show up on the day but have done online. They can be really good, allowing for you to make turn 2 Rhinos on the draw. Went with Seasoned Pyromancer instead of Bone Crusher Giant. I like this just because it allows you to kind of cycle through your deck quite quickly and backup threat as well. 2 copies of Prismari Command, 2 copies of Dead Gone, and I am still rocking the one of Murktide Regent. Been pretty good to me. If the opponent manages to exile all your Crashing Footfalls or whatever, you need a backup plan. So Murktide Regent is a great one there. And if the opponent doesn't see it game 1, they often won't. They're not going to bring in things like Terminate often for your Murktide Regent. So if you manage to win game 1, Murktide can then steal game 2 or 3. And then pretty much classic sideboard. Not really much to say here. I'm on the 3 moon in the board. I've seen a few things this week about putting Blood Moon in the main, which I could get on board with. It seems to be well positioned at the moment, but I was happy with it in the board. And I played a 1 of Jace the Mind Sculptor. I was expecting quite a lot of grindy matchups to bring that in against. So yeah, I thought I'd just do a little bit of chat about the matchups on the day. So round 1 was against Red Green Valakut, a bit of a blast from the past, running things like Wish for Scape Shift, and also things like there was a card that let them, I think, draw some cards, Thrilling Discovery or something, let them sort of churn through their deck a bit more. So took a loss here, round 1. Just wasn't quite quick enough. And didn't have, I think, game 2 didn't have the force at the right time for their Scape Shift. Or rather, I think I had force but not a blue card in hand. Really need to be putting the pressure on there with sort of turn 3 Rhinos. Blood Moon is obviously really good. Not sure whether you should be, I think you should be mulliganing quite aggressively to either sort of Blood Moons or turn 3 Rhinos here. Force of Vigor, not really great in this matchup. They're not really relying on, I didn't see it as a saga or any sort of new developments like that. So yeah, pretty classic list. Don't think I kept amazing hands, and it was a bit unfortunate in game 2 to not have a blue card to pitch to force. But yeah, that was round number 1. So then went on to play Blue-Red Murktide. This is a matchup I've played a lot and I feel pretty confident about. The only real... So there's a couple of real dangers to you in the matchup. One of them is a uncontested Ragavan. that can just accrue way too much value. So often I look, I'm not averse to pitching Fury just on turn 1 to kill their turn 1 Ragavan. Obviously, Deadgon is much better. If you're on the play, obviously you can potentially Fire Ice it as well. And yeah, early Murktide is the other way you can easily lose that game. We struggle a bit to deal with Murktide Regent outside of Brazen Borrower. So, but yeah, feel pretty confident with it. You have to be a bit smart as to when you time your spells. So, quite a lot of the time you're trying Violent Outburst in your opponent's upkeep to play around. Some of them play Force of Negation, but it also kind of constricts their mana, because if you're Violent Outbursting on the upkeep of their turn 3 and they have to use a counter spell, they can't really do anything else that turn, and you're potentially free to Shardless Agent the next turn to make Rhinos, and they don't really have any. Some play a one of Engineered Explosives in the main, but certainly game 1 they often can't kill all of the Rhinos without sort of using a lot of mana and a lot of cards, and you end up quite ahead. So sideboarding, I took out I think all the Force of Negations, brought in Mystical Disputes, and then I think I cut some Prismari Commands as well. There's a bit clunky in the matchup, and brought in my Endurances. Endurance key for both keeping our opponent off an early Murktide Regent and dealing with Dragon's Rage Channeler. Also blocks Ragavan. So yeah, that was great. Managed to get there 2-0. Another key thing was kind of sometimes it's best to wait to play Shardless Agent on turn 4 when you can hold up Mystical Dispute as well as a backup. But overall, pretty happy with that matchup. So round number 3, we were 1-on-1. Ended up playing against the Mirror. So it was just Team of Rhinos, but they were on the slightly different plan. So they were on Bone Crusher Giants instead of Seasoned Pyromancers. I didn't see a Murktide Regent. So again, managed to get there 2-0. Game 1 was a bit of a rout. My opponent never found any Cascaders, and I think I cast all 4 of my Crashing Footfalls. Opponent did manage to deal with quite a few of them with Furies and killing them with sort of Deadgons and bouncing them with Brazen Borrowers, but in the end just overwhelmed them. Boarded, so I think we took out the Deadgons. We brought in all of our Mystical Disputes, and I think we brought in a Jace as well. We took out some Prismari Commands, and Deadgons, brought in some Mystical Disputes and a Jace. And then game 3 was a bit more even. Back and forth, making Rhinos. The real key in this one is if you can avoid it, you don't want to pitch cards to force. Obviously, sometimes you have to, but it can be, you're often better off just not pitching and then making your own Rhinos to block their Rhinos, just because you end up with no cards in hand. So I think I was on the right side of that exchange. I played the Mirror quite a lot. I was able to sort of get my Rhinos down, and then I think I drew 2 Brazen Borrowers, which helped as well bounce their Rhinos. Took that one down 2-0 as well. So then we went on to play. We played 2 blue-white controls in a row. That was rounds 4 and 5, and managed to win both. The first one had what is now I think quite stock is 4 chalices in the main, and the second one only had 1. But it's always something you've got to be aware of when you're playing against the new blue-white control decks. Then the plan against those is they will often be able to deal with Rhinos, but it can be quite hard for them to deal with them if you get them down. They'd much rather deal with them on the stack. So again, a bit like Blue Red Murktide, you just have to be a bit careful when you're timing them. Teferi, Time Raveler and Chalice are obviously pretty horrendous. But what I found with this matchup is it's often good enough to get in 1 or 2 hits with a couple of Rhinos, and then you usually end up burning them out. So, you know, you get them to sort of 3 or 4 life, and then you get in a couple of points of damage with the Seasoned Pyromancer, and then finish them off with burn from Prismari Command or Fire Ice or what have you. Making Rhinos in their upkeep is, again, really good. You can constrict their mana and sort of back it up with Force of Negation. And then Blood Moon out of the sideboard is pretty good, depending on the build. If you see a very basic heavy list from the opponent, that can be less good. But yeah, managed to get there with that one. Boarded in obviously all the Mystical Disputes and Jace. I think we boarded in Blood Moon as well. We took out some Dead Gons. I think we kept in the forces. We took out Prismari Commands, unless they were on, with the exception of the 4 Chalice build. I think we left in the Prismari Commands. Yeah, there's a full sideboard guide that I was kind of following. I'll link it. I can't remember who's written it, but I'll link it in the description below. I sort of followed that as a base for what I was doing, just to get a general idea. Other than that, I don't think there's too many things here. Yeah, managed to win both games. I think 2-0 and 2-1. Yeah, not letting sort of planeswalkers go unanswered is a big thing in that matchup, and Fury can be good there. And Fury ends up just being, you know, a threat that you can hard cast later on. Murktide was really good here as well. You know, one game, you know, I managed to get Rhinos down before a Chalice, or I managed to bounce a Chalice and then get Rhinos down, get in a hit. My opponent then dealt with them with, I think, Supreme Verdict. But then, you know, you're able to cast your backup threats, Seasoned Pyromancer and Murktide Regent, and just get over the line. So that was 5 rounds, and then moved on to our winning in. So we were at 4-1, we couldn't intentionally draw, so we were needing a win in round number 6 to make top 8. And then we came across Temur Reclamation in our winning in. So not one we've seen very often, but relying on the Wilderness Reclamation enchantment to untap lands and then casting some big spells. We saw Memory Deluge, we saw Nexus of Fate, I think, but proved just a little bit too clunky to deal with. You know, making 10 power on turn 3. It was an 80 card Yorion one as well, so you know, sometimes struggled to find all the answers they needed, and we were just never really, there was never really a threat that was sort of potent against us, so we had quite a lot of time to just make Rhinos and sort of crash in. Opponent was sort of building up, I think, to big Shark Typhoons and stuff, but we just didn't give them the time for that. We were able to also interact with their Wilderness Reclamations with Brazen Borrower, Force of Negation. Sideboarded pretty similarly to control. You know, Mystical Dispute's great. I think we brought in Blood Moon as well. Yeah, so pretty similar. So that meant we made top 8. So went on to play the quarterfinal. This was against 5-color Niv Mizzet, which we won, I think, 2-0 again. So yeah, this, I think, round 1, opponent kept a 1-lander, and then was pretty unfortunate to never find another despite multiple draws with Abundant Growth, so we kind of got that one for free. And then game 2, we managed to get Blood Moon going pretty early on. Opponent couldn't, it wasn't killing them because they had fetch basics and they did have the enchantments that let them tap for any color, but we managed to kind of get them on a low life total, and then opponent nearly stabilizing with an Omnath, managing to gain 4 life every turn in the face of a couple of rhinos beating them down. I think 3 rhinos. But then kind of a key decision was opponent found a Wrenn and 6 off the top of their library, which I decided to pitch to cast Force of Negation, which was kind of key because you can't just let Omnath keep gaining life with fetch lands, and Wrenn and 6 obviously supplies a never-ending supply of fetch lands. So yeah, brought in all the Blood Moons, we brought in all the Mystical Disputes there, possibly a Jace as well, and then we took out things like Dead Gone, which doesn't really hit anything out of that deck. Prismari Command again doesn't really do too much, and I think we took out Force as well because a lot of the things you really care about are no, don't think we did actually. I think we took out maybe a couple of Forces, because a lot of their threats are creature based, Niv Mizzet and Omnath. So do need to no apologies, we did keep in the Forces because of Teferi Time Reveler, which is a card they play. So yeah, that was our quarterfinal. On to the semi-final. Ended up paired against Amulet Titan, which is a deck that's had a bit of a resurgence at the moment, including the new Cultivator Colossus, which my opponent was playing. So round number 1, just sort of managed to get there. I think I got pretty I had some pretty good draws, so managed to make so we made Rhinos on 3, crashed in for 10, and then in my opponent's upkeep we were able to, of their turn 4, we were able to ice their bounce land, the one that makes 2 mana, and then that drew us into a Brazen Borrower, which was able to bounce the Amulet of Vigor that they'd played. So that was obviously a really good draw, and I think my opponent said that if I hadn't have interacted with their sort of stuff in that way, they would have just been able to kill us that turn. So yeah, Fire Ice bounce tapping their bounce lands is obviously really good, and being able to interact with their amulets is also key. And then brought in all of our Force of Vigors and all of our Blood Moons, took out Furies, Dead Gones. Don't really do too much in the matchup. And then fairly similar story. Opponent managed to get a Titan down, but then I waited until they'd searched their lands. They got double Valakut. We dealt with the Amulet. I think might have forced an Amulet. They got 2 Valakuts while they had a Dryad on the field. And so they got a load of triggers, but then I managed to Force of Vigor the Dryad because it is an enchantment. Force of Vigor kills enchantments, which meant that the Valakut triggers did not resolve, and then there was enough powers worth of Rhinos to get there. So yeah, and then managed to get that one 2-0 as well. Moved on into the final, which I split with yet another control opponent. By this time it was starting to snow here in the UK, so we were both quite keen to split, take our share of the prizes. So yeah, walked away with some, let my opponent have the Underground Sea, walked away with a box of Modern Horizons 2 set boosters and some cash. So yeah, very, very pleased. Guess I should talk a bit about any changes I make. I have the store championship coming up this weekend, where I think they're all over the world. These at your local gaming store. Don't know how many players there'll be. There were 64 at the event that I attended last weekend, but going to be running this again. The only change I think I'm going to make is swapping out Jace, putting in Clothis. Jace was just a bit win more in the games I I played, it could have been very good. I guess I didn't play too much sort of just grindy mid-range. I didn't see it against control, but I don't know. I think that's the only change I'm going to make for this week. Seasoned Pyromancer is another option. I've been experimenting with Bone Crusher Giant, and I could definitely see an argument for playing Bone Crusher instead. But yeah, hope everyone enjoyed that little bit of a rant by me. Do let me know if this has been in any way valuable. We're going to record another league in a sec with this list, so I'll be putting that up again soon. But yeah, for now, I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.